We can't debate. We can't reconcile. You have your mindset, I have mine. You believe in the promised land, I don't believe in that. You believe that you are chosen by God, but I don't. It seems our conversation won't lead us to agreement. I understand.
I don't know if my audience has ever heard me say in my entire life that I am chosen by God, but okay, I think I've never said that in any of my videos. And I have more than 1,000 videos, but I like to see that right from the start you're judging without knowing me, and you're right about that, we don't agree. I haven't judged you without knowing you, but why are you an atheist? No, no.
No, no, first of all, I'm not an atheist. That's the first thing. I'm agnostic. And second, look, no, agnostic, yeah, I can't say it exists or doesn't exist. I don't have enough evidence to prove belief in God, and I don't have enough evidence to deny a God. And in any case, if one did exist, I don't think it would be like the one many religions describe. For example, the Catholic religion describes it as a being of love or hate. The Jews have, well, they have their own way of seeing things.
I understand you.
So I think that's understandable.
Because it's true. You can't try to prove something you can't conceive of, okay?
And for me, nations are the most important thing. Each nation is dependent on its customs and on what shapes it. For example, if a Russian likes to eat, his native food is from Russia, he has to be respected. So, I strongly disagree with religions that try to change a person's traditions. Like Judaism, for example. No offense, but it's the truth. Judaism is a lifestyle. Others say it's a religion. So in the end, you can't really understand if it's a religion or if it's a lifestyle. And if it's a lifestyle, then I adopt Judaism. So if I were to adopt Judaism, do I have to leave my traditions and my roots behind? That's why I say you and I have very different backgrounds.
But, okay, but would you agree then that there should be a Jewish country? Where you put all the Jews there so they can live with their customs and that's it, just let them live in peace. Thank you.
It's just that it's not that easy either.
You'll probably say you agree with giving each group their own country so everyone can live happily.
With their customs in their own country, I agree. Uh-huh. I agree that someone native to a country should respect its traditions and culture. Okay, right? Okay. The state of Israel, everyone knows there's no need to play dumb about how it was formed. Politically speaking, not religiously speaking. Politically speaking, it was a territory that was given to them thanks to the help of the English. Or am I wrong? Or didn't England help there?
England created all the countries in the Middle East and many in Asia and Africa. If you look at the map, England likely influenced the formation of most countries. To begin with, let's start there. But no, actually, England, they promised after the Balfour Declaration to create a national home for the Jewish people, but then they started to restrict the entry of Jews into Israel. They had also agreed with the Arabs, including King Faisal, to form an Arab country from the Hejaz to Syria. That's why they issued the white paper restricting Jewish entry. That's why groups like the Etzel and Lehi fought the British. The British even considered them terrorists for this reason, because they opposed British rule. So it's not.
Not exactly.
It's not very accurate, but okay, let's say that the British took part in giving the Jews a country.
It's still the same thesis. But I'm right, whether they helped or not.
The British had a hand in the creation of many of the countries in the Middle East. In that sense, yes, but on the other hand, they also put obstacles in the way of creating the State of Israel. So yes and no, no, there's not a clear answer. 100% definitive, but the point I could, let's say, take from what you're saying is that yes, if you're saying religions shouldn't exist, I agree. I don't think they should exist either. But religions. But I heard myself 3 times, but what you agree with is that there should be a country for groups of people, for example, that Russians have their own territory and that's it. So what happens with the Jews historically were the natives of Judea. They were expelled throughout the world. They never lost hope of returning until finally the opportunities arose to do so. A diplomatic effort to be able to have Judea again, and eventually Judea was given to them.
Okay, fine. I'm taking two things from what you just said. First, you said that I'm partly right when I told you that England did help, but only partly, which is strange, but okay. Second, you just said that for you, religions shouldn't exist, right? Correct. Those words came out of your mouth. Okay, one question. So, if you deny religions, why is it that the people of Israel are so determined to promote Judaism? What do you think? Well,
You were already pointing it out, the complexity of defining Judaism. Personally, I don't see Judaism as a religion. I think Judaism has more to do with national and cultural factors than religious ones. Because there are atheist Jews who don't practice anything, they're completely secular. And they're part of what is called Judaism. So it's a complex definition. That's why I agree with you that it's difficult to define what this is. But I maintain I don't think there should be religions. I include Judaism in that. I don't think there should be a Jewish religious system either. There should be a national, social, spiritual system. Let's call it philosophical. I don't know, but religious. No, I don't think so. That's my position. Yes, even if religious people in the chat are getting upset.
but Judaism, well, you say that. Some people say it's a lifestyle, but theoretically it's a religion.
Theoretically, starting in the 17th century, the encyclopedists began to call it a religion. This is from Schleiermacher, who wrote a science developed in Germany called Wissenschaft des Judentums, that's how you say it in German, which is called the Sciences of Judaism. And from there, with Moshe Mendelssohn and all of them, they began to develop the idea that Judaism is a religion, but this is a designation from the 17th century made in a specific sector of Europe. What happened is that this specific sector of Europe was the one that prevailed in international academia, and that's why the world believes that Judaism is a religion, the modern world. Before the 17th century, people didn't say that Judaism was a religion. They called it a law. They simply called it the way of life of the Jews. The word Judaism appears for the first time in a book called Second Maccabees, in the words of written by Hassan of Cyrene, where he talks about Judaism versus Hellenism. That is Jewish life versus the life of the Hellenists. That is the Greeks, the gymnasium, and all of these versus the national life, the life of the Jew. That is the context of the Maccabean revolt. I'm getting a bit too deep into historical details, but no, Judaism itself is not a term that started out as a religious one. That's what the encyclopedists of the 17th century invented, but in essence, it was never like that.
So it's not, so in short, it's not a religion.
I don't think Judaism is a religion, personally. I understand that there are people who believe it is, because categorizing Jews, they were a group of people scattered around the world, and categorizing them. What do we call these people who are truly a people? They are the Jewish people, but they don't have a territory, but they do have legislation. So since they didn't have a territory, Westerners decided to put them in the category of religions. But when the Jew returned to his territory, this definition started to come back again as it was in the past, before the Jew lost his national independence. So, yes, that's how it is, that's where it's going,
It's heading ballad.
like a point.
Okay. You understand that in a dialectic, beliefs don't really matter, right? It's about objective criteria and arguments. So, you believe, but your belief doesn't matter. No disrespect to your belief, but it doesn't matter. If a rabbi comes here and wants to talk to me about Judaism and says, I'm going to talk to you about Judaism, then I, according to your belief, could say, no, no, don't talk to me about that because that's not a religion. That's okay, right?
So, yes, and like I said, I understand that there are people who believe that Judaism is a religion, like you say. I think it's a mistake to say that it's a religion, and I have my historical, philological, and etymological arguments for why it's not a religion, but you're right. If a rabbi discusses Judaism, he'll likely present it as a system of thought like Christianity or Islam, but I think that's a mistake. I think that when we talk about Judaism, it's parallel to Mexicanism or Japanism, because Jews are a people, not a religion. Jews are a group, a people, right? That's where I'm going with this. But you would agree, nevertheless, tell me, I don't remember your name, Yasser, that if Jews didn't have what you call religion, whether they had it or not, that's not our concern. But if Jews, by definition, are a people, because there are atheist Jews and they still belong to this Jewish people, wouldn't it be very... How do you say... Do you think it would be consistent by your own logic, the one you apply to Russians having a Russia, that the Jew should have a Jewish one?
By my logic, what I told you, because I'm going to state it again, is that every country, every tradition must be respected, right? That's what I said first. I remember it very well. The second thing I said is that in Judaism, you abandon your traditions to adopt a way of life. If you see it as a lifestyle, then you have to abandon your traditions. I understand.
If a person wants to convert, yes.
Yes, okay, I understand you.
If a person wants aha,
They have to abandon their traditions. Okay, perfect.
but that's based on your logic too.
No, that's a fact. But no, look,
If in your utopian logic that says we have to respect the culture and beliefs of each country, if a person, a French person, wanted to move to Russia, they would have to adapt to being Russian, right?
if the French person arrives in Russia, they would have to adapt to the establishment, to the country where they are exactly, and respect the religion that exists in Russia. Example, what do I have against Judaism? It's that I don't like it. I mean, I don't like it. People can do what they want, but I don't like it. When a person, no matter what country they're from, let's say an Argentine says, I want to convert to Judaism, they immediately have to completely cut off everything, all that it implies, all their traditions, and adopt it. That's right. So, that Argentine is no longer an Argentine and becomes just another Jew in terms of lifestyle. I'm not talking about nationality.
But you said the same about the Frenchman who became Russian and didn't see an issue.
No, but listen. It's different if you tell me, well, okay, that the Jewish people have a place where everyone can live peacefully, that's fine. I have no problem. I have no problem with that. Wait,
May I interrupt? I understand your point.
all right.
If that place were the land of Israel, would you agree?
It's just that this topic is broader, you see, but that's what you're saying.
If the Jews had a national territory where they could have their culture, where no one bothers them because everyone's culture should be respected, and everyone's religion and whatever else in their own place. And if someone comes, they should adapt to their, well, that already exists. It's called Israel.
All right, literally.
So,
Basically, you're asking about Zionism. Do you understand me? That's fine. Whoever wants to become Israeli Jewish, call it whatever you want. Nowadays, concepts are often twisted. That's fine. I respect that. What's the problem? Politically speaking, I told you, not religiously. Politically speaking, the state of Israel, when was it born and where was it born? Politically speaking, not religious.
3,000 years ago, more than 3,000 years ago, the Jews already had national independence,
It was interrupted by historical periods.
but it was reborn from the ashes at the end of the 19th century.
No, you know that's not how it is. Of course it is.
The state of Israel is the continuation of the same national ideology that the Jews have had since Bar Kokhba and since the Maccabees for a long time.
Wait. If you tell me that 3,000 years ago I asked you the question politically speaking, okay, fine, I can ask you a follow-up question, which is, can you show me evidence from political books? Something that establishes what you just said politically, I mean nothing religious, that confirms what you're saying, an act, a pact, something that was done.
The Torah is a political book. The Torah is a book about politics. Have you read it? It talks here about wars, about kings, about conflicts with Assyria. A prophet who says you people will return to your land, you will have your territory again, and you will once again have independence. And the tragedy is that Babylon comes and destroys independence and war, and this king fights with that one. It's a book about politics. It's a book, it's the political justification of the Jews. This book, it's a book about politics, and it's the oldest book that every Western house has, I think. That has it. Okay, so yes. Well, the thing is, I understand that you have your community here about the Torah.
And everything is perfect. But you know that politically speaking, religion is independence and politics is tragedy. It's true, sometimes religion itself gets intertwined with politics. I know there are states that are completely religious. But when I asked you, there are states that are completely religious, but when I asked you directly to show me something political, I wasn't expecting the Torah or things like that. But okay, wait.
You can mention to me, I can show you, you can mention anything from the Torah, and I'll show you how it's political, whatever you want, any chapter, any verse, and I'll prove to you that the point of it is political.
Well, look, since we're talking about this topic, I want to ask you a question that I've always had. Is that okay? And I want you to answer this one for me because I've always had this question and I've talked to Jews and they always twist it or answer me indirectly. Is it true that we all have Jewish blood?
Everyone? I'm not sure who you mean. Like, if you take an Igbo in Africa, if you take, I don't know, a tribe in Tanzania, I don't think they have Jewish blood.
Look, okay, perfect. It's just that several times I've come across Jews who say that they descend from Abraham, that he was the forefather, and they bring in a religious person and use that to say that we all have Jewish blood. Do you think the same as they do?
No, I don't think so. In fact, it makes me uncomfortable, it bothers me, and it makes me a little sad that people pretend to have Jewish blood. Why? They've learned, as you said, about being the chosen people, so they want to be part of it, they want to be chosen too, and they want to have that blood. I'm not coming from that point of view. I think all nations have something. They're important. We call them the children of Noah more than the children of Abraham. They're the children of Noah. Noah is the father of humanity in the biblical narrative, let's say. And that every nation in the world has a role, has an importance. That's why I don't think people should say to themselves, I have Jewish blood. Look, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't add anything to have Jewish blood. Each person should value themselves whether they have Jewish blood or not. That's my point of view, right?
Okay, so no, not everyone has Jewish blood. Okay, perfect. I wanted to understand that because once I talked to a Jew and I mentioned that no, I'm from America and that I'm from America, from the American continent, and I consider myself a Spanish speaker and I support and appreciate Spain a lot. And I support Spain a lot. And he told me no, but the thing is that America has Jewish blood. And he told me, and I said, well, that's interesting because before 1500, America hadn't had any contact. There were theories that Vikings arrived here, unless you're saying Jews came to America. What he told me, he said there was, I don't know, he spun me some story which I thought was ridiculous, no offense. That there was some crew member who got off course on his journey and managed to reach the Americas. But anyway, I'll stick with yes.
I heard that theory. No, I heard that theory. I don't think it's correct. What is true is that many of the Jews who were expelled from Spain in 1492, many of those Jews also came to America. Yes, there was part of the process of racial mixing because there was a phenomenon called racial mixing. Yes, the locals and Africans and Europeans after those 200 years and almost 300 years of process, new, let's say, races and tools began to emerge. Yes, it's very likely that there are people who are descended from Jews who were expelled from Spain. But Judaism is not measured by genetics or by blood, just so you know. I mean,
it's measured well
by maternal lineage, yes, but not by a genetic factor like having Jewish blood for half a millennium. That's not a factor. Yes, just so you keep that in mind.
I mean,
Judaism is measured by other parameters.
I'll say two things before I leave. You mentioned races, so you believe they exist.
That's why it makes me uncomfortable. They call them races because that's how they're portrayed. Racial mixing isn't really a race. There's just the human race. And there are different, let's say, skin tones and anatomical features in terms of how they're perceived. But let's call it that for now.
Look, the second thing I'm going to give you is a piece of advice. Look, unfortunately in the world, hate is easier than love. I'm telling you this because it's the truth. It sounds bad, but it's the truth. The problem I have with Israel is not that they live there. The problem is that there were already agreements signed that the people of Israel... I'm not speaking religiously since I know the religious issue dates back over 3,000 years with the Canaanites and such. That's why I know about it, which is also related. But speaking politically, for me, what I would like in Palestine, in Israel, is for there to be a division and for everyone to have their own side. Unfortunately, there are many problems involved in that. Betrayals, culture, and religion. But I hope, because it's not like I want a genocide against the Israelis either, because not all of them are like that. You and I know that there are good people and bad people, and there are terrible ones. Honestly, there are Jews who are terrible, because people think all Jews are good, and that's never the case. What I would like is for everyone to agree on a fair partition, and that way things would look better. That's all. Take care.
Greetings! And if you allow me, my conclusion based on what I've gathered from you before you leave or if you want to start leaving.
I'm from Costa Rica, man. That's where I'm from.
Pura vida. What I understand is that you say every people should have their own country, that they should be left in peace. Alright, you're basically a Zionist, so I send you my best regards.
Well, no, Zionism, well, that's already another topic. Zionism was born. It's the definition that the Jews can have their own country.
Being at peace in their ancestral homeland is the definition of Zionism. That's what a country is.
The definition of Zionism where it was born, yes, it was born to defend the Theoretically, Zionism was born to defend the values of the people of Israel and to create, gather, and respect their traditions. Alright, okay, I'm not a Zionist. In my case, I would be more of a nationalist above all.
Jewish nationalism is Zionism. Well,
I send you my regards. Yes, Jewish, but not mine. Mine is nationalist.
okay,
Alright, well, take care. In the end, we were able to talk after all. Regards.
take care.
All good.